Scrub faster, human. The Armistice won't celebrate itself. The Queen's Chancellor, Oren Tal, stood above the mirrored concourse, his voice slicing through the choir of crystal bells that rang for the festival of continuance. The floor beneath him shimmered with liquid starlight, reflecting the vaulted expanse of the Starspire Palace, where banners of 1,000 worlds rippled in artificial gravity. And on his knees, mop in hand, Elias Ward obeyed in silence. 3,500 years of peace, Oren continued, his pale carapace gleaming under the aurora crown. And still, the humans crawl. Perhaps that's the balance the universe demands. Some species to stand, others to kneel. Elias wrung out his mop and said quietly, "Balance requires both." The Chancellor paused, expression curdling into contempt. "What did you say?" Elias met his gaze. "Even a star falls if no one cleans the dust off its mirrors." A ripple of laughter echoed from the nobles gathered along the balcony. They thought he'd made a joke. They didn't notice how his fingers lingered on the mop's handle, how his thumb brushed two faint circular studs on its surface, as if tracing memory. You'll want to see how the moment they mocked him turned into a galaxy-wide reckoning. Because in less than an hour, the same hands they laughed at would hold the fate of their stars. Oren sneered, but Elias simply resumed his work. His voice was calm, measured, human in its patience. "I clean, Chancellor, because it keeps me close to what matters. You look down and see filth. I look down and see reflection." The noble's laughter faltered. Oren gestured dismissively, waving him off like a servant insect. From the apprentice gallery above, a small voice cut through the hum. "Father, are you done soon?" Mira, Elias's youngest, leaned over the railing, her hybrid eyes glimmering like mismatched gems. One human blue, one Lyran gold. Next to her, her brother Kyle kept a protective hand on her shoulder, glaring at anyone who whispered. "I'll be done soon, little one," Elias said softly. "Stay with your brother. The lights will get brighter before the music ends." She smiled, but her small fingers clutched the railing, knuckles pale. Even from below, he could see the tremor of her wristband monitor, an almost imperceptible pulse that flickered in time with the palace lights. Oren noticed. "Still bringing those half-breeds here, janitor? The academy is no place for mistakes of biology." Elias didn't rise. "They're not mistakes. They're what peace looks like when it learns to breathe." The silence that followed was colder than space. Above, the aurora crown that powered the hall dimmed for a heartbeat. Just one. But the sound it made when it came back wasn't right. It wasn't music, it was a groan, a resonance, a warning. The Queen herself, seated on her throne of harmonic glass, leaned forward. "Is the peace engine compensating for something?" she asked. Technicians scrambled, adjusting displays. Readouts turned amber, then red. "Residual vibration," Oren stammered. "Nothing more." But Elias knew that tone. He felt it in his bones, in the rhythmic flutter of his daughter's weak heart. The peace engine, the vast, invisible, harmonic machine that kept entire sectors from collapsing, was trembling. And as if to punctuate the thought, Mira gasped, clutching her chest. Her wristband flared crimson. Elias dropped his mop and stood. "She's in resonant sync. She's feeling the drift." Guards stepped forward, blocking his path. "Stand down, human." On the main display, the holographic readouts spiked. Across the hall, cracks of light spiderwebbed through the reflective floor. The 3,500-year Armistice, a peace older than most civilizations alive, began to unravel in front of the galaxy's leaders. "Contain him," Oren shouted. "He's contaminating the chamber." "Wait!" one of the technicians yelled. "The drift isn't coming from him." But the Chancellor's command echoed louder. Guards seized Elias, forcing him to his knees. His mop clattered to the ground, rolling until it rested against the dais, its worn metallic handle glinting once under the aurora light, humming almost imperceptibly. The Queen rose. "Who is responsible for this?" Oren bowed. The human janitor was stationed at the resonance vents when the first anomaly occurred. Her gaze turned toward Elias, unblinking and cold. "A human near the peace engine? After everything history has warned us?" Elias said nothing. The guards tightened their grip. The hall's vibration deepened, rattling glass and bone alike. "Lock him down," the Queen ordered, "and prepare an inquiry. If the armistice fails, I will have the guilty buried with it." Elias's calm vibrated weakly against his wrist. Mira's vitals dropping. He shut his eyes, steadying his breath. Around him the nobles argued, the screens flickered, and the light of peace itself began to dim. He whispered to himself, "Hold on, little one." No one heard the words but the palace itself. As the guards pulled him away, a low hum pulsed through the mop still resting by the dais, too faint for alien ears, but unmistakable to the last of the navigators. It was the song of a wounded machine calling home, and far above, where the apprentices huddled in fear, Mira's trembling slowed for a heartbeat, syncing with that same note. "Where are you watching from?" They thought he was only a janitor. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The corridor to the council inquiry chamber glowed in pale blue light, its walls pulsing with the residual heartbeat of the peace engine far below. Every few seconds, the vibration deepened, a tremor that felt almost alive, as though the palace itself were gasping for breath. Two guards flanked Elias, their boots clicking in, perfect mechanical rhythm. Behind them, nobles and aides whispered into their comms, broadcasting rumors to the millions watching across the Concord. The story had already spread. A human janitor had sabotaged the galaxy's heart. Elias kept his head bowed, eyes tracing the reflections of light that swam across the floor. He could feel the same rhythm inside his chest. It wasn't fear. It was calibration, his body aligning, instinctively, to the dying pulse of the peace engine. The rhythm was off by less than 1%, but he could tell it was cascading through the network. If it reached critical divergence, entire sectors would destabilize. Stars would slip from their harmonic anchors, and his daughter, tied to that resonance since birth, would not survive the next pulse. As they reached the massive chamber doors, Chancellor Orenthal adjusted his ceremonial collar and smiled thinly. "Enjoy your moment of fame, human. The galaxy adores a villain." His voice was smooth and metallic, carrying easily into the cameras hovering above. "We gave your kind a place under our roof, and you repay us with betrayal." Elias looked up. "You built your roof on foundations you never understood." Oren's jaw twitched, but the doors opened before he could answer. The inquiry chamber was a cathedral of glass and gravity. Hundreds of floating seats formed concentric rings around a single dais suspended over a column of light. The Queen sat at the center, her silver robes drifting like liquid moonlight. Her expression was controlled, but tension had crept into her eyes. She didn't like chaos in her halls. The peace engine's warning lights rippled across every wall, crimson bands that pulsed in time with the sound of Mira's faltering heartbeat hundreds of meters above. Guards forced Elias to his knees in the center of the light. The hum of the palace pressed against his skull, and he felt the faint harmonic whine of the mop handle still somewhere nearby, abandoned but not inert. It was calling to him like an old instrument, longing to be played. "State your designation," the Queen commanded. "Elias Ward, Maintenance Custodian, Resonance Sublevels 3 through 9. Explain your presence near the oscillation vents at the time of destabilization." "I was cleaning them, Your Majesty." Laughter rippled through the chamber. Even the Queen's lips curved into something that was not quite a smile. "You find humor in catastrophe, Chancellor?" she asked dryly. Oren bowed. "Merely irony, my Queen." The creature was assigned to the resonance vents, a position that grants physical access to the engine's peripheral channels. There are no other humans stationed that low, none who could tamper unnoticed. The Queen turned back to Elias. "Is this true?" "I've been assigned there for 15 years, he said evenly, "because I clean what no one else wants to see." Oren smirked. "He admits it himself." Elias ignored. Him. His attention was on the displays lining the walls, showing telemetry from the peace engine. The data flowed in chaotic waves, frequencies bleeding into one another, harmonics splitting like shattering glass. The energy wasn't leaking randomly. It was pulsing in patterns, steady and deliberate. Someone or something had triggered a feedback loop at the edge of the Concord's frontier. He could see the waveform signature repeating every 7 seconds. Illegal resonance testing. They'd blame humanity for that too. He looked up at the Queen. You're losing containment. The core's amplitude is rising. You have less than an hour before Cascade. Orin laughed aloud. And now the janitor gives orders to the throne. Perhaps we should make him chancellor. The Queen raised one hand, silencing him. Her eyes for the first time narrowed with interest. You speak as if you know the engine's language. Elias hesitated. I've spent a lifetime listening. Listening? He nodded. Every night after the palace sleeps, the floors vibrate, the walls sing. I learned their patterns before I learned your words. Murmurs rippled through the audience tiers. The Queen studied him carefully. You presume much, human. You think you can hear what our scientists cannot? I think, Elias said quietly, that you've forgotten who taught your ancestors to listen. That silenced even the air. The Queen leaned back, gaze sharpening. You dare claim lineage to the navigators? Orin scoffed. A fable, a human myth wrapped in self-pity. But Elias didn't respond. He felt the vibration shift again, deeper now, angrier. The floor panels shuddered beneath him, and holographic maps flashed crimson as a new surge tore through the peace engine's harmonic spine. Alarms blared. Several nobles gasped as the gravity momentarily inverted, sending them floating upward before the stabilizers re-engaged. Amplitude breach, one technician shouted. Resonance, desynchronization in progress. The Queen stood. Find the source. We're trying. Signals originating inside the palace node. All eyes turned toward Elias. Orin pointed a trembling claw. He's still connected to it. His biology is interfering. Elias shook his head. No, it's the opposite. The engine's calling for synchronization. It needs correction. The Queen's expression hardened. You are not authorized. I don't need authorization. His voice cut through the noise, calm but resonant. I just need to clean. He rose before the guards could stop him, eyes fixed on the glowing telemetry panels. The frequencies overlapped in chaotic spirals, but he could hear the underlying structure, the true pulse hidden beneath distortion. It wasn't random. It was begging for equilibrium. Let him work, said a voice from the gallery. It was faint, trembling. Mira's voice carried through the hall's open channel. He knows the sound, Your Majesty. He's the only one who does. Every camera turned toward her tiny figure. The Queen hesitated. Your Majesty, Elias said, his tone almost a plea, if you shut it down now, the harmonic collapse will consume the capital first. Let me access the vault. Orin barked. He's manipulating you. This is exactly what his kind. But then the chamber floor cracked, a seam of blue light racing toward the dais. Energy burst upward, flaring across the ceiling in a storm of color. The Queen's attendants screamed. The Chancellor stumbled back. Elias stood in the center of the chaos, perfectly still. He reached out a hand not toward the guards or the Queen, but toward the mop that still lay near the dais. It quivered, rolling across the floor as if drawn by gravity, stopping at his feet. For a breathless second, time seemed to halt. Elias's fingers closed around the handle, and the hum of the peace engine synchronized instantly with the rhythm of his pulse. A shimmer of golden resonance danced along the rod. Orin stared in horror. What are you doing? Elias didn't answer. He simply tilted the mop handle slightly and listened. The chamber's chaotic vibrations shifted almost imperceptibly, aligning to the same frequency. The peace engine's reading steadied for 3 heartbeats, proof enough for every camera watching. The Queen whispered, By the star. The moment passed. The reading surged again, more violently than before. The harmonic stabilizers screamed under the load. Elias lowered the staff and met the Queen's gaze. The engine's failing. It needs a manual retune at the vault source. If you don't grant access now, you'll lose not just your palace, but every system tied to it. She looked down at the data flooding her screen, numbers collapsing into static. She saw the faces of her trembling nobles, the crowd beyond the cameras, and the faint reflection of her own fear in the mirrored floor. Finally, she spoke. Open the vault. Orin spun toward her. Your Majesty, you cannot. Open it, she repeated louder this time. If the armistice must end, let it end in truth. Guards disengaged the restraints. The floor split apart, revealing a transparent lift descending into a pillar of blinding blue light. Elias stepped forward, mop in hand, the hum of its hidden lattice matching the dying pulse below. He looked once toward the gallery where Mira stood pale but smiling weakly. He nodded to her, a silent promise. Then he stepped onto the platform and began his descent into the heart of the peace engine. The transparent lift sank through the palace floor, descending into a column of living light. The deeper it went, the quieter the sounds of panic above became, until all that remained was the low, thunderous heartbeat of the peace engine. The hum was ancient, resonant, almost sentient, a sound older than the Concorde itself. Elias Ward stood, alone, the mop handle trembling faintly in his grip, as if recognizing the gravity of where it was being taken. His reflection fractured across the glass walls, rippling with each pulse of light. It wasn't fear that tightened his breath. It was memory. He had been here once before, long ago, when the navigators were still trusted to tune the stars, when humans were still part of the song. The lift opened onto the vault. The space was colossal, spherical, and impossibly alive. Rivers of blue energy flowed through suspended conduits, spiraling toward a massive, rotating sphere at the center, the master oscillator. It was cracked along one axis, bleeding radiant streams that evaporated into glowing mist. The entire structure pulsed off rhythm, its harmonics dissonant and raw, like an orchestra tearing itself apart. The Queen's voice came faintly through the comm uplink. "You have authorization, human. Stabilize the core if you can." Her tone carried no pride now, only fear. Elias walked forward, boots echoing on the metallic platform that circled the sphere. The energy resonated so strongly it made his bones vibrate. He could feel Mira's heartbeat faintly through the haptic band on his wrist, slowing, sinking to the engine's falter. He whispered under his breath, "Hold on, my star. I'm here." He placed the mop handle, the navigator's staff, against the nearest harmonic conduit. The moment the metal touched the energy flow, the rod flared with golden light. Ancient lines etched into its surface ignited, forming spiraling patterns of geometry and sound. The chamber responded with a deep, shuddering tone. For the first time in millennia, the peace engine had recognized a human frequency. Above, the Queen and her council watched through a dozen projection screens, millions tuning in from across the Concorde. The janitor stood alone in the heart of their galaxy's most sacred machine, bathed in the glow of creation itself. The Chancellor's voice cracked with disbelief. "He's activating it by hand, without shielding, without a harmonic suit. That's suicide." Elias didn't hear him. The staff's vibration harmonized with the frequency of his pulse. Slowly, deliberately, he rotated the rod in his hands. Each turn produced a wave of tone that rippled across the conduits, chasing the chaos back toward the core. Sparks of coherent light flickered in response, synchronizing for seconds at a time before the dissonance returned. He was close, but the drift was deeper than he had feared. The engine wasn't just unstable, it was in pain. He reached the central interface node, a pedestal of translucent crystal with 5 harmonic grooves spiraling upward. The grooves corresponded to calibration keys, the same ones the navigators had once tuned manually during the early Armistice. His fingers trembled as he pressed the rod into the first groove. The chamber flared. Images bled into his mind. Planets, civilizations, all connected through the hum of the engine. He saw their cities shaking under invisible storms, oceans sloshing in unnatural tides, skies bending under fractured gravity. Billions of lives balanced on the sound he now controlled. "Elias," came the Queen's voice, softer now. "Can you restore it?" He closed his eyes. "I can align the core, but I'll need a resonance channel open from the palace to the upper relays. The output must match human harmonic sequence." "That protocol is forbidden," the Chancellor snapped. "No living species has that clearance." "Then they'll die obeying rules written by ghosts," Elias replied. He pressed the rod deeper into the interface. The grooves shifted, reacting to his touch. Harmonic symbols, the language of the navigators, glowed around him, spiraling upward into the air. The vault filled with light so intense that even the surveillance feeds dimmed to protect the watcher's eyes. He began to hum. It was barely a sound, more vibration than voice, but it resonated with perfect precision. The staff responded, amplifying the note into a pure frequency that poured through the engine. It struck the core like a tuning fork, and for an instant, all motion stopped. The chaos froze. The pulse steadied. In the council chamber, technicians gasped. Stabilization achieved. 30% synchronization and rising. The queen rose from her throne, staring in awe. He's singing to it. Impossible, Orin hissed. No human could. The screen flared again as new data streamed in. The peace engine's frequencies aligned with the human's heartbeat exactly. Elias's pulse had become the central tempo of the galaxy's stability field. Each beat synchronized thousands of smaller nodes across the Concord. The impossible was happening. Elias adjusted the rod's angle, his hands steady despite the surging energy. The light crawled up his arms, etching faint golden patterns into his skin. It didn't hurt. It felt like recognition. The machine remembered him, remembered humanity. He reached for the second groove and locked it into place. The cracked sphere began to repair itself, fractures sealing with streams of light that folded inward like molten glass, cooling into perfect form. But the deeper he tuned, the more resistance he felt. The feedback loop from the border system surged, pushing against his corrections like a storm. He realized then it wasn't random failure. Someone was feeding false signals into the engine, weaponizing resonance. His jaw tightened. "You did this," he whispered. "You let your fleets test near the borders." Through the uplink, Orin's voice stammered. "Those tests were classified. How could he possibly—" "Because the engine remembers," Elias said. "And now so will the galaxy." He struck the final chord. The staff emitted a burst of harmonic light that rippled through the vault, reaching every conduit, every relay. For 10 long seconds, the peace engine shone like a newborn sun. Then the glow softened, settling into steady, symmetrical pulses. The readings on every monitor turned green. The Queen exhaled a shaky breath. "Stabilization at 99.8%, a technician confirmed. Across the chamber, applause broke out, not polite but stunned, the sound of disbelief giving way to relief. Orin, pale and trembling, stared at the screen showing the human standing amidst the light. He's the last one." In the vault, Elias withdrew the staff and sagged to his knees. The energy dissipated gently, leaving him illuminated by the core's soft hum. The harmonic field felt whole again, balanced. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy's pulse matched that of its maker. "Status of your daughter," came the Queen's voice. He looked at the monitor on his wrist. Mira's vitals were steady. Her small heart had resynced to the restored frequency. "She's alive," he whispered. The Queen's image appeared before him as a holographic projection. Her silver eyes reflected the glow of the rejuvenated engine. "You've saved more than a life, human. You've saved peace itself." Elias stood, gripping the staff like a cane. "No, Majesty. I only cleaned what your pride allowed to rot." The words hung between them. She said nothing, but the silence was louder than any reply. In that silence, history shifted. Above them, the broadcast continued streaming across every world. Billions watched the human janitor standing alone in the light, the mop in his hands glowing like a relic of forgotten divinity. For the first time since the Armistice began, the galaxy remembered who had once kept its stars from falling apart. Elias turned his gaze upward toward the lift. "It's stable for now," he said, "but the resonance drift will return unless the core is reseated. The system needs a manual broadcast to reset the network alignment." The Queen nodded slowly. "Then we will prepare for it. You will have full access to the relays." He shook his head. "Not me alone. Humanity built this peace, but it's everyone's to maintain." Her projection flickered, faintly smiling. "Then teach us, custodian." As the lift began to rise, carrying Elias back toward the surface, the peace engine's hum followed him, steady, reverent, endless. The janitor who saved the stars ascended through the column of light, his reflection framed in every polished surface. The galaxy had seen him kneel. Now it would watch him rise. When the lift breached the upper vault and rose into the council chamber, silence fell like gravity. The nobles who had mocked him minutes earlier now stood transfixed, their reflection trembling in the mirrored floor. Elias Ward stepped forward through the haze of residual light, the staff in his hand still pulsing with a slow, golden heartbeat. The peace engine's resonance echoed through the walls, soft and steady, a living rhythm that felt like the first inhale after drowning. The queen rose to her feet. For the first time, her voice carried uncertainty instead of command. "Is it done?" Elias nodded once. "The core is stable. The galaxy will hold, at least for now." His tone was even, deliberate, the same quiet humility that had once been mistaken for submission. But the moment he spoke, every console in the chamber flared to life, scrolling with data the alien scientists struggled to interpret. The readout showed synchronized waveforms, green across the entire harmonic grid. The palace tremors ceased. Outside, the twin moons of Lyra shimmered back into place, perfectly aligned. It was proof that peace, fragile and ancient, had not yet shattered. Then a new set of readings appeared, overlaid in red. Sector telemetry flashing unauthorized activity. Elias glanced at the data and frowned. That pattern, his pulse quickened. It's not decay, it's interference. He reached forward, tapping one of the holographic projections. The frequency pattern matched exactly what he had seen in the vault. A repeating, weaponized signal emanating from the border fleet stationed near the edge of the Concorde. The Chancellor blanched. "That's restricted military data. Shut that feed down." The Queen's eyes narrowed. "Restricted?" She turned toward him, her tone suddenly cutting. "Explain." Oren stammered. "It's a containment exercise, standard protocol." "No, it isn't," Elias said, stepping closer. "That's a resonance weapon. Your fleet tested it near a stabilization relay. You fractured the entire Armistice grid trying to harness the peace engine as a weapon." His words hung in the chamber like an accusation carved from light. Gasps rippled through the tears of spectators. The Queen's expression hardened into something between fury and disbelief. "Is this true?" she demanded. Oren bowed, sweat glistening on his translucent skin. "It was a deterrent demonstration, Your Majesty. Controlled, contained. The human's access to those readings is impossible." But the Queen cut him off with a raised hand. "Enough." Her gaze swept back to Elias. "You saw this?" "The engine showed me," he replied simply. "It remembers everything." The Queen stood in silence for several seconds, her eyes flicking across the holographic data. Every line of telemetry confirmed it. The destabilization had originated not from sabotage, but from a fleet's test on the outer rim. The revelation spread instantly across the broadcast network. Billions of viewers saw it in real time. The entire lie unraveled. Oren Tal, the noble who had humiliated him, began to tremble. "You don't understand the political cost. Our defense command needed leverage." Elias turned to him. "You almost ended existence for leverage." The Queen's voice rang out like a struck bell. "Guards, remove him!" Oren stumbled backward. "Majesty, I did this for the Concorde." She didn't look at him. "And in doing so, you nearly destroyed it." The guards seized him, his ornate robes scattering light as he was dragged toward the exit. Every camera stayed fixed on the image of Elias, barefoot, soot-streaked, holding a glowing staff that hummed with the same energy that powered the galaxy. Elias turned back toward the Queen. "You can punish him, but that won't repair what's been broken. The Armistice has held for thousands of years because someone remembered how to listen. You've forgotten the language." The Queen regarded him for a long time. Her expression softened, imperceptibly, but it was there. "And you remember it?" He looked down at the staff. "I remember enough to know it isn't mine alone. Peace is maintained through understanding, not ownership. The engine knows this. It needs resonance across every voice, every world, not just one." She descended the dais slowly, her robe's edges whispering against the polished floor. "You speak like a philosopher, human, not a custodian." Elias smiled faintly. "Maybe they're the same thing." A moment later, the chamber erupted in a thunder of applause. Not the polite acknowledgement of victory, but raw, emotional gratitude. People cried openly in the stands. The images of the stabilized sectors flashed behind them, proof of survival. The Queen raised her hand to quiet them. "The Concorde owes you a debt beyond measure, Elias Ward. You have restored equilibrium where our arrogance failed." He shook his head. "Equilibrium isn't restored yet. The relays need reseating. The harmonic grid will hold only for a cycle before the drift returns. The engine must broadcast new calibration patterns through the aurora pylons. It requires a human imprint to complete the sequence. The Queen frowned. Then you'll do it. I will, Elias said, but I'll need open access to the upper broadcast array, and you'll need to invoke the royal codicil of continuance to authorize it. The Queen hesitated. Around her, the nobles stirred nervously. The codicil was ancient law, one that stated that if ever a being restored the peace engine in crisis, that being could command the throne's authority over all technical and moral decrees relating to it. To invoke it publicly was to admit weakness. Majesty, one advisor whispered, that law predates the Concord itself. It hasn't been spoken in 3 millennia. The Queen silenced her with a gesture. I know what it means. She turned to Elias. And you ask me to give that power to a human? Elias met her gaze calmly. Not power. Permission. I don't want your crown. I just want the engine to breathe. That was when something changed in her expression, a slow unraveling of pride. The Queen looked out at the chamber, then at the live broadcast feeds shimmering around them. The entire galaxy was watching. For the first time, she bowed her head. Then by the codicil of continuance, I grant you authority as custodian of resonance. Do what must be done. A sound like wind moved through the chamber as the ancient words echoed through the harmonic lattice. The peace treaties inscribed on the palace walls glowed faintly, old human and alien script intertwining like 2 languages, remembering they had once been the same. Elias inclined his head. Then let's begin. He raised the staff and struck its base against the mirrored floor. The chamber lights dimmed, and the air filled with the hum of awakening pylons. Outside, the aurora crown above the palace blazed to life, streams of golden energy reaching skyward. The peace engine's pulse deepened, spreading through the network of satellites that girded the Concorde. For a heartbeat, the entire planet seemed to hold its breath. The Queen whispered, "What are you doing?" "Preparing the broadcast," Elias said. "The grid has to be reseated manually from the highest point. The palace roof connects directly to the crown relays. I'll need to align it by hand. You'll be exposed to the harmonic current," she warned. "No one can survive direct synchronization." He smiled faintly. "You said no one could clean the resonance ducts either." A small laugh broke through the Queen's tension, a sound so unexpected that it startled her guards. "Very well," she said. "Then we ascend together." As they turned toward the lift leading to the rooftop array, the nobles parted in silence. The Queen and the janitor walked side by side, the ruler of the galaxy and the man who had once scrubbed her floors. The broadcast captured every second. Billions watched the contrast, her robes of living starlight against his scorched uniform, his tool of humility gleaming brighter than any crown. Outside, the sky thundered with power as the aurora pylons gathered the harmonics for release. The galaxy itself seemed to lean closer, listening for the next note. And above the palace, in the glow of 2 moons reborn, Elias Ward lifted his eyes toward the heavens he had just saved and whispered to no one, "Let's finish what we started." The roof of the Starspire Palace was unlike any place built by mortal hands. It hung suspended between gravity and sky, a circular platform of mirrored alloy surrounded by colossal pylons that reached into the stratosphere. Streams of energy danced between them like ribbons of molten sunlight, feeding directly into the aurora crown. The night above was alive, 2 moons casting pale fire across the clouds, the stars shimmering like 1,000 watchful eyes. The peace engine's heartbeat pulsed beneath the structure, slow and heavy, as if it too waited for what came next. Elias Ward stepped out onto the windswept platform, the mop handle, his navigator's staff, clutched in one hand. Beside him walked Queen Aurelia Vinthera, her robes trailing sparks as they brushed the conductive surface. Behind them, guards and nobles watched from the tower entrances, but none dared follow. The air up here was charged. One wrong step could turn bone to vapor. "This was never meant for living beings," the Queen said, her voice nearly lost to the wind. "Only machines perform the broadcast sequence. They die each time it's done." "Machines don't have heartbeats," Elias replied. "That's why they fail." He paused at the platform's center, the convergence point where all 9 pylons met in an invisible web of power. The staff in his hand vibrated faintly, drawn to the energy lines beneath the floor. The peace engine's hum grew louder, sinking to his pulse. Every few seconds, the resonance stuttered, a faint tremor of instability that warned how temporary the earlier repair had been. Aurelia folded her arms, her composure fighting against the fear in her eyes. You understand what will happen if you mistime the alignment? The current will strip your atoms from existence? Elias looked up at the sky. If I don't, everything burns anyway. The Queen stepped closer. You're not obligated to do this, human. You've already saved the galaxy once tonight. He smiled faintly, though his eyes stayed fixed on the stars. The galaxy doesn't stay saved. It just keeps needing someone to remind it what balance sounds like. He knelt, placing the staff flat on the platform. At his touch, the alloy rippled outward in concentric circles, responding to his biometrics. He entered the harmonic sequence manually, humming under his breath as the ancient navigator language lit across the surface in spiraling sigils. Aurelia watched, unable to look away. It wasn't magic, yet it felt like something divine. What are you doing? She asked. Preparing the lattice, he said. When the broadcast starts, I'll have 10 seconds to match the engine's internal frequency and the crown's outer pulse. The harmonics must align perfectly, mind, heart, and field. One mistake, and it all collapses. And you think you can do that? I don't think, Elias said softly. I listen. He rose, the staff now glowing gold from tip to base. The energy arced toward the nearest pylon, a line of light that connected him to the vast network above. From the palace below, billions of viewers watched through holofeeds as the janitor turned savior stood against the storm, his silhouette framed by lightning and moonfire. The wind tore at his clothes, but his stance never wavered. The Queen's advisors whispered frantic warnings through her comlink, urging her to order the human back inside. She ignored them. The first pulse hit like thunder. The pylons flared white, discharging streams of plasma into the heavens. The aurora crown spun faster, a halo of fire encircling the palace. The harmonic grid engaged, and Elias felt the resonance slam through his chest like the breath of a god. He staggered, gripping the staff with both hands as light cascaded through his veins. Every molecule in his body vibrated at the edge of coherence, but he held. Aurelia shielded her face as the wind howled around them. What's happening? The reseed sequence, Elias shouted. The peace engine's tuning forks are aligning across every sector. I need to sustain the bridge until the harmonics stabilize. He spread his stance, lowering the staff until its tip touched the platform. A column of golden light erupted upward, linking him directly to the engine beneath the planet and the relay satellites orbiting thousands of kilometers above. His entire body became a conduit. The data streamed through him, frequencies, waveforms, gravitational feedback, all translating instinctively into movement and sound. He began to hum again, low and steady, matching the pulse that now enveloped the galaxy. Everywhere across distant worlds, people looked up. Oceans calmed. Mountain ranges shimmered under new auroras. The peace engine's heartbeat spread through every relay like a pulse of life. Even on frontier worlds where the Concorde's authority was nothing but rumor, people heard it, a soft note under the wind, steady and human. In the chamber below, technicians stared in disbelief as readings poured across their consoles. Output synchronization rising. 80%, 90, 95. Then the alarm screamed. The overload threshold was approaching. The broadcast was too strong. The human body wasn't meant to sustain this magnitude of resonance. On the roof, Elias's knees buckled. Light bled from his eyes and fingertips. The energy began to consume him, each pulse stripping layers of matter away, like sand in a storm. The Queen rushed forward, grabbing his arm though the current scorched her skin. Enough, she shouted. You'll die. Elias forced a breath through clenched teeth. Better me than the stars. Aurelia stared at him, this quiet man who had spent years invisible in her halls, whose children had been mocked by the same nobles who now worshipped him. She realized with piercing clarity how small she had been in the shadow of his humility. If you survive this, she whispered, I will change everything. Then you'll have to survive me doing this first, he replied. And with a final breath, he drove the staff down into the center of the platform. The explosion of light was silent, too bright for sound. The energy tore upward into the crown, expanding outward across the sky in concentric waves. Each ripple carried the recalibration code, harmonizing every node in the network. The broadcast echoed through the entire galaxy like the tolling of a great bell, a song of equilibrium sung in a human voice. Inside the chamber, the readouts flashed one last surge, 100% synchronization. Then all the lights went out. For a moment, there was only silence. Then came the sound, the slow, rhythmic heartbeat of the peace engine, steady once more. The lights flickered back on. The technicians stared at the monitors, tears in their eyes. "He did it," someone whispered. "He reseated the grid." Above, the roof was scorched black. Smoke drifted where the lightning had danced. The Queen stumbled through the haze, coughing, searching for any sign of him. She found him lying near the center of the platform, the staff beside him, still glowing faintly. He was breathing, shallow but alive. The harmonic patterns that had covered his arms were fading, dissolving like morning frost. She knelt beside him, lowering herself onto the ruined floor. "Elias Ward," she said softly, "custodian of resonance. The galaxy will remember your name." His eyes fluttered open. "Names fade," he murmured. "Balance doesn't." The Queen looked out at the sky. The aurora had transformed into a vast, golden spiral stretching from horizon to horizon. It shimmered with a single tone, a harmony so pure that even the air vibrated in awe. Across the galaxy, worlds trembled, not in fear, but in awakening. Aurelia rose slowly, her silver robes scorched at the edges. "Let the codicil record this," she said to the hovering cameras. "Tonight the conquered was saved not by armies or crowns, but by the hands of a father who remembered what peace was meant to sound like." Her words traveled instantly across the networks, transmitted to every inhabited world. And as the echo of her declaration reached the stars, the people of the galaxy, alien and human alike, stood in reverent silence beneath skies reborn in light. Dawn rose slowly over Lyra Prime, washing the palace in liquid gold. The twin moons faded behind the horizon, and for the first time in recorded history, the sky was utterly still. No distortion, no flicker of resonance storms, just silence and light. The peace engine's hum had settled into a rhythm so natural it was almost invisible, a background heartbeat woven into the planet's song. Within the great halls of the Starspire Palace, people spoke in hushed tones. The banners that once shimmered in arrogant colors now hung quietly, as if in mourning for something older and wiser than pride. In the infirmary chamber below the Aurora Crown, Elias Ward stirred from sleep. The world came back to him in pulses of sound, soft beeps from medical monitors, the distant whisper of harmonic stabilizers, the faint tremor of the peace engine miles below. He opened his eyes to find Queen Aurelia seated beside him. Her crown was gone. In its place, a simple silver circlet rested on her brow, unadorned, almost human. For a long time she said nothing. She just watched him, as if trying to understand the kind of man who could hold a galaxy in his hands and ask for nothing in return. "How long?" he asked, voice hoarse. "3 days," she said. "You've been unconscious since the broadcast." He nodded faintly. His body felt heavy, but alive. He flexed his fingers. Faint golden lines shimmered beneath his skin before fading away. The resonance markings were almost gone now, but he could still feel the echo of the harmonic pulse deep inside him, like a memory of the stars. "You stabilized the entire network," she said. "Every relay, every system, every colony. The galaxy is synchronized again." She hesitated. "We found evidence of the weapon tests you uncovered. The fleet commanders responsible have been arrested. The Concord's Council has dissolved their jurisdiction." Elias's eyes flickered open wider. "And the hybrids?" Aurelia looked down, her voice softer. "No one will call them that again. The Council ratified new legislation this morning. Every child born of 2 worlds is now a citizen of the Concord. Their resonance will be measured, not mocked." He exhaled, closing his eyes. "Mira?" "Recovering," the Queen said. "Your daughter's vitals stabilized the moment you completed the broadcast. She and your son are in the Academy wing. They haven't left since the day you fell." The door opened then, and two small figures rushed in before any guard could announce them. Mira was first, her steps unsteady but determined, her wristband glowing faintly with perfect synchrony. Kyle followed, taller now in posture than his years allowed, his eyes carrying something new, a quiet pride no one could take from him again. They reached his bedside, Mira clutching his hand, Kale standing guard at the foot like a sentry. Elias smiled weakly. Told you the lights would get brighter before the music ends. Mira laughed through her tears. You made them brighter forever. Aurelia rose and stepped back, allowing the moment to unfold in peace. For the first time there were no cameras, no broadcasts, no onlookers. Just a father, his children, and the hum of a galaxy reborn. Later that day, the Queen summoned the Council and the surviving members of the Concord's assembly to the Great Hall. The space had changed. Gone were the tiers that separated species by hierarchy. Gone were the floating seats of the nobles. In their place stood a single circular floor of reflective alloy, the same kind Elias had once scrubbed on his knees. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. Aurelia addressed them from the center. The codicil of continuance was not written for monarchs or soldiers, she began. It was written for those who keep the stars from falling apart. It speaks not of conquest but of maintenance. It honors the unseen hands that hold the galaxy together. Tonight, we honor one such hand. The lights dimmed. A platform rose from the floor, and upon it lay Elias's staff, the once humble mop that had tuned the peace engine and saved countless worlds. The handle glowed faintly, alive with residual energy. It had been cleaned of soot and blood but not polished. The dents and scratches remained like scars of history. Around it, newly forged plaques, shimmered with engravings in every known language. At the top, written in both human and Lyran script, were the words, "He cleaned the galaxy's reflection, and in doing so, saved its stars." Elias stood at the edge of the platform, flanked by his children. The Queen turned to him. By decree of the codicil, the staff of Elias Ward will be placed in the Gallery of Common Tools, beside the relics of every laborer, engineer, and craftsman who has shaped our civilization. Henceforth, it shall remain not as a symbol of power, but of service. The hall fell into reverent silence. Then one by one, members of the council stepped forward, each laying a small item at the base of the platform. A miner's lamp from the asteroid guilds, a mechanic's wrench from the orbital docks, a farmer's glove still stained with soil. Every offering glowed faintly as it touched the base, linking into the harmonic field that filled the room. Elias bowed his head. You don't need to honor me, he said quietly. Just remember what the work means. Aurelia smiled. The work will remember you. From that day on, the palace corridors changed. The servants no longer walked in silence. The maintenance workers were greeted by name. Hybrid children filled the academy halls with laughter instead of whispers. Across the Concord, new guilds formed, navigators, custodians, harmonic stewards, united not by species but by purpose. They were trained to listen, to maintain, to protect. The peace engine was no longer guarded by secrecy, but tended like a living being. Months later, Elias returned to his old routine. He still cleaned the reflection galleries, still repaired resonance ducts, still fixed what others overlooked. Only now, when nobles passed him in the corridor, they stepped aside. Some bowed, others whispered his name like a prayer. He accepted none of it. He was a man of patterns and quiet moments, and he found peace in the sound of cloth against steel, in the hum of balanced systems, in his daughter's laughter echoing down marble halls. One evening, as the sun set and the palace lights dimmed, he paused at the gallery's entrance. The staff stood encased in crystal, surrounded by the relics of laborers from every corner of the galaxy. Children pressed their faces to the glass, pointing and whispering. A young apprentice janitor polished the floor nearby, unaware of who watched him. Elias smiled. The boy hummed as he worked, the same old navigator tune. "Keep it steady," Elias said quietly as he passed. The boy looked up and grinned. "Yes, sir." Elias stepped into the twilight corridor, the air alive with the faint resonance of the engine below. The peace it maintained wasn't perfect. It never would be. But it was alive, balanced, And somewhere beyond the horizon, on worlds he would never see, entire civilizations slept beneath skies, still held together by the work of invisible hands. As he walked toward the balcony overlooking the city, he glanced up at the twin moons, their light reflected off the palace glass, painting his face in silver. He thought of Mira's first laugh after the storm, of Kale's fierce pride, of the queen's bowed head as she had spoken those ancient words. He thought of the mop in the gallery and the sound it had made when it first struck the floor that day, the note that had changed everything. He leaned against the railing, listening to the faint harmonic whisper that only he could hear. It was the same frequency that had called to him from the peace engine years ago. It wasn't asking for help anymore. It was singing. Elias Ward closed his eyes and smiled. "You're welcome," he murmured. Below, the city shimmered with a million lights, each one beating in time with the galaxy's heart. And far beneath the palace, in the depths where metal met light, the peace engine pulsed on, steady, eternal, clean.